I'm going to tell you a story about a time I made the wrong decision with my money and how I don't regret it one bit, and why I think we could all stand to make a lot more wrong decisions. I'm Ben with the YNAB team, and this is Sketchy Advice. So here's the story. I'm in the Salt Lake City airport. It's about 9 in the morning. We just put on a big YNAB event, and I'm ready to fly home. And when I get to the gate, I see a big crowd of people standing around the customer service desk with arms crossed and angry faces, which is not a great sign. Turns out our plane had a technical issue, so they replaced it with a plane that had 16 fewer seats. So they start offering up deals for people who are willing to get on a different flight. And I'm traveling by myself. I don't have any super urgent plans, so I decided to hear them out. Here are the options I was given, and I want you to think about, if you were in my situation, which one of these deals would you have taken? The first option was to wait around the airport for a few more hours, take a direct flight home, and then with driving from the airport to my house, that would land me home around dinner time. If I took that deal, the airline would pay me $600. The second deal was to wait around the airport basically all day, then fly to Denver, then fly from Denver to Kansas City. That itinerary would get me home at 3 a.m. But if I was willing to take that deal, they would pay me $2,400. So imagine you're in my situation. Do you take the $600 for a few hours, $2,400 for the whole day, or do you just get on the flight and not worry about it? I wound up taking the $600 deal. And then, for the next few months, every time I thought about that choice, I asked myself, was that the right decision? Which is a really interesting question. If you're like me, you ask that question all the time, especially when it's a decision where the difference is $1,800. But what does that really mean? Maybe what I really meant was that a responsible decision? Which I think comes from a place of good intentions. We know our choices impact people, and we want to do right by our people. But that term responsible can be pretty nebulous. A lot of us think that the most responsible thing we can do is just to constantly deny and deprive ourselves of things we actually want. And when it comes to money, the responsible decision is usually something like save it away or put it in retirement, which is all well and good, but a lot of us wind up just kind of doing that reflexively. We just save without really any purpose except to build up more savings, which in the end kind of feels like you're just saving for a really, really, really nice coffin. Maybe I meant is this the choice that would maximize my wealth? That's certainly what podcasters and TikTokers would say. But that assumes that making more money is always worth it, when I think we all know that there are things in life that you could not pay us enough to do. You could not pay me enough money to climb to the top of one of those super high radio towers, or do one of those spelunking things where you're crawling for a mile on your chest. That's not worth the money. Maybe the right decision is what would my dad do? Or what would Warren Buffett do? Or whatever. Considering what other people I respect might do in my situation can be helpful, but it has its limits. Because they're not me. So then maybe the right decision is the optimal decision. It's the one that maximizes the benefits and minimizes the drawbacks. That definitely makes intuitive sense, and it's what a lot of the studies I look at seem to be measuring for. But I think there's actually a trap hidden in that way of thinking. I used to teach live workshops for YNAB where I answered people's questions. And by the way, if you've never been to one, you should totally check them out. They're 100% free. We teach you an effective mindset and method for making a plan with your money and making spending decisions. And you get to ask questions to a smart and really, really kind teacher. Totally go check those out. When I taught those kinds of workshops, I would get a lot of questions from people looking for the objective, correct, specific number or percentage. What is the correct amount to have saved for this? What percentage of my money is the correct amount to put towards housing? And while we would get into the nuance of those things, the baseline answer I would always give is whatever helps you sleep better at night. Which is kind of an ironic answer for me to give personally, because I am actually very bad at sleeping well at night. I'm like a junior varsity insomniac. And it probably won't surprise you if you're someone who watches this show often, that the way that I deal with that is to do as much research into sleep as I can, get all the tools and tips and techniques and apps that I need in order to optimize and maximize my getting sleep potential. And psychologists actually have a term for that. They call that aspiring to happiness. It's where you have an outcome in mind, you make a plan to achieve that outcome, and you execute on that plan. And unsurprisingly, people who aspire to happiness tend to be happier. Wow. You heard it here first. People who are intentional about trying to be happier tend to be happier. But there's this dark flip side to that if you're not careful. It's what psychologists call concern for happiness. You know when you're lying awake at 3 in the morning and you look at your clock and you think, if I go to sleep right now, I could get 5 hours. And then your brain kind of goes, but I'm not going to do that. I'm probably going to go to sleep at like 4 a.m., which means I'm only going to get 4 hours. And then that means that my immune system's going to be compromised and blah, 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 blah. Like, it just becomes this whole thing. That's concern for happiness. It's looking at your current situation, how happy you are right now, and asking, am I as happy as I should be? Would I be happier if I did this, 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 and this? And of course, 99.9% of the time, when you run that analysis, there's always something you could be doing that would make you happier. And that's kind of a bummer to be like, oh, I'm not, as happy as maybe I should be. It's weird because aspiring to happiness and concern for happiness, in both cases, you're thinking about your happiness. But one actually is effective at helping you to become happier, and the other is actually sabotaging your happiness. It is making you sadder. Like, imagine what would have happened if the airline had just come to me and said, okay, you can wait here for 3 hours and get $600, or you can get on the plane. Final offer. Well, then I would be ecstatic. I'm getting paid $600 to just sit around and listen to podcasts and play Balatro. Awesome. But as soon as they introduce that $2,400 option, all of a sudden, I'm not really sure. This decision that seemed like a really good thing suddenly feels like maybe it was a whiff. And if the way I'm thinking about right decisions is always based on like, well, am I being optimal? Am I maximizing benefits and minimizing drawbacks? Then that's a really stressful way to live. And the more I thought about this, the more I thought, maybe I'm just asking the wrong question. Let me ask you to make a different set of choices. I want you to imagine that you have 3 portals in your home. And each of those portals, you can walk through it and go to a specific place. And you're just there. And you can walk right back and get home. You basically have 3 distinct places that you can just teleport to. And like, it only works for you. People can't like walk from Disneyland into your living room. The only rule is each portal has to be in a specific fixed place. You can't put it on a train or a person. It's got to go to a specific location. Where are you putting those portals? I'm actually going to give you a little bit of time to think about this. So here you go. Now, here's the follow-up. You actually only get to keep one of those portals. So which one are you going to keep? Now, when I hit people with that follow-up question, they usually give me one of 2 responses. Either they start to agonize between those options. They're like, oh, I really like seeing this friend, but it would be really cool to just be able to go hiking in the mountains or whatever, and I don't know. Or they just no. Like, my wife, Maddie, would love to be able to go to New Zealand and see the sheep and the cows and the mountains and the hobbits. But if she had to pick one place, no doubt it's going to be her parents' house, which she grew up in the town where a bunch of her family still lives. And it's funny, when I ask the first question, a bunch of people will put like their commute in there. They'll be like, oh, it'd be nice to save like an hour or 2 a day doing that. But the commute never makes number 1. It's never the thing that people decide to keep. Even though, arguably, that's more optimal. You're saving gas and wear and tear on your car and time in your day, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what people are thinking about. People are thinking about, what is the place that if I could just go there, my heart would just leap? Where do I want to be able to just go because that's just who I am? And I think that is the kind of question we need to start asking about our own spending. Not necessarily, is this optimal, but is this me? Am I sending my money toward the things that I actually care about? If you were to look through YNAB or your bank statements or whatever, would you see yourself in there? Does it look like you? And a lot of the time, the answer isn't very interesting. Like, I pay my mortgage every month because I want to keep living in a house. That's not that profound of a statement. That doesn't feel like self-expression. And I think this is one of the things that's so frustrating when you are struggling with money, is money has all this potential to go towards all of these things and experiences and causes and people that you care about. And it keeps getting eaten up by these bills and these obligations and these debts. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about teaching the YNAB method and spendfulness here on YouTube is because I want to help people move from this place where their dollars feel like hit points they're constantly losing in a video game to a place where they feel like little portals that they're pointing at the places they want their life to go. You want to know why I took the $600 deal over the $2,400 deal? Before I went on my trip, I told my son Knox, who was 2 years old at the time, that on Sunday, I would be home in time to tuck him in. That's it. Now, I'm not sure he even remembered that I made that promise. I could have probably bought him off with like a toy or an ice cream. And in the long run, is he gonna remember that I did that when he's an adult? Probably not. But I didn't make that decision because it was optimal. I made that decision because I want to be the kind of dad who keeps my promises to my kids. It's funny. Speaking of Knox, he has a younger brother, Lachlan, who turned 1 recently. And we had a conversation a few months ago where we were talking about the fact that Lachlan was going to turn 1 and how eventually he's going to be old enough to where Knox and Lachlan can play together like buddies instead of as like a baby and a toddler, you know? And we started talking about more things that will happen as they grow up. You know, eventually someday you'll go to school and you'll drive a car and maybe you'll have your own family and all this stuff. And at the end of that whole conversation, Knox looks at me and says, well, I don't want to grow up. I just want to be myself. And listen, do I want Knox to grow up? Yes. But I don't want him to grow up into me or Warren Buffett or anybody else. I want him to grow up into more of himself. And there are so many people on this platform and on TikTok and writing books and doing podcasts and all this stuff who will tell you, well, the way to be successful, if you want to be successful with money, you have to become like me or become like this person. And yeah, we can pick up good habits. We can get better mindsets. We can do all that stuff. And that's great. But we can never lose sight of the fact that the person spending our money is us. And the one person who is an expert on how to spend that money spendfully is you. And that means sometimes you're going to make spending decisions that don't look like the right decision to other people. Where other people say, I don't know if I would have done that. I don't know if I would have given up $1,800 to tuck in my 2-year-old. And you know what? I don't care. And I don't think you should either. I think that when I look back on my life, I'm not going to ask myself, was I optimal? Did I maximize my benefits and minimize my drawbacks? I think I'm going to ask myself, like, did I live the truest life I could live? I think that's not just spending your money well, that's spending your life well. If you have a story like mine where you made a suboptimal decision because you were being true to yourself, I'd love to hear about it. We'd all love to hear about it. So please leave a comment about it. And if you'd like to learn more about what I mean when I'm talking about spendfulness and how to build this foundation for a life of self-expression and all this, then you should check out this video over here. Bye.